This is Zestology, new rules for living with energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wright, I'm walking around London on another hot, sunny summer's evening, and I'm pretty certain, I'm almost sure, I can almost guarantee that you're going to change some of your routines in your daily practices after listening to this podcast. Can't be 100% certain, but I pretty much guarantee you're going to be changing your routine a little bit after listening to this. Dr. Satchin Panda is a bit of a ledge. He's possibly the world's most respected in the area of circadian rhythms. He's a massive expert in intermittent fasting. His new book is called The Circadian Code: Lose Weight, Supercharge Your Energy and Transform Your Health from Morning to Midnight. And in this podcast we talk about time-restricted eating. I always think the phrase time-restricted feeding and feeding windows makes us sound a little bit like we're in a zoo, and we're not. I want to enjoy my food as well. But there seems to be very little doubt amongst many of the experts that come on Zestology that if you can somehow restrict your feeding or your eating into a certain kind of 8 or 10 hour window during the day, then it's going to help in lots of different ways. And you're going to find that out in this podcast. We also talk about bright light at night and eye masks. Supplements. Is it okay to take supplements outside the feeding window? See, now I've said that I don't like that phrase, I'm going to use it all the time. We talk about heart rate variability and fasting. Coffee. Can you drink coffee as part of an intermittent fast? Yeah, you might not like this bit that much actually in the podcast. And saturated fat in the evening, as well as melatonin supplements and what that could do for your sleep. Sleep is actually something that pops up a lot in this podcast. And if you are interested in improving your sleep and enhancing the amount of time that you sleep and the quality of your sleep, I think you're going to really enjoy this. It is one of my favourites. Satchin is a real expert in his field, and I hope you enjoy it. And there's absolutely no doubt that I have already started to make changes after interviewing Dr. Satchin Panda. So here he is on Zestology.
I think the word intermittent fasting is a little misleading because it's a very broad umbrella term. It includes 5-2 diet, every other day eating, long-term fasting, and also many different hours of eating within a day. So the way we define, or the way we have been publishing this series of work is what we call time-restricted eating, where you define a set window of time within which you eat every day. And then we have a human human study that's going on at the website called mycircadianclock.org. Anyone, anywhere in the world can sign up and use an app that's IRB approved, and we preserve privacy, to go through a 12 weeks self-directed time-restricted eating, or you can say intermittent fasting. So in these 12 weeks, we advise users to do 3 things. One is self-select a 10 hours window. And how to self-select that 10 hours window? There are 2 key tricks. One is within 1 hour of waking up, don't try to eat or drink anything, because within that 1 hour of waking up, your hormones are going back and forth. Your sleep hormone is slowly going down, and your alertness hormones are going up, and both of them have some effect on your metabolism.
Even that is just so different from what most people do, isn't it?
Yeah. So we see nearly 80% of people wake up and eat or drink something within an hour. So try to avoid that first 1 hour. That's a good time to even go out, get 15 minutes to 30 minutes of bright daylight. You don't have to be under sun. Even if it's cloudy day, it's great. And then leave yourself 2 to 3 hours before going to bed to not have any food. Of course, you can drink water, because that's when your sleep hormone is slowly climbing up, and the sleep hormone melatonin can slow down your insulin function. And that's why you don't need, that's one reason why you don't need food in your stomach. Second is your stomach is also going to sleep around the same time. So it's not pumping food and digesting as efficiently as during the day. So that's why you should leave 2 to 3 hours before going to bed. And now we can figure out what will be most convenient based on your lifestyle, where you live, how much commute time you have, or whether you're committed to eat a breakfast with your family or a dinner with your family, so you can figure out that 10 hours.
Right. So that 10 hours could start at 10 in the morning and finish at 8 in the evening or whatever it might be.
Yeah. So the bottom line is whatever 10 hours people choose, there is some benefit. And there are some studies that are suggesting that if your 10 hours is more pushed towards the beginning of the day and you end, say, around 6 or 7 in the evening, then that's slightly better than the other 10 hours. But the bottom line is any 10 hours is better than randomly eating over 15, 16 hours.
Okay, so time-restricted eating in a 10-hour window within 24 hours. And actually, I'm very interested on what you just said there, because I've been using one of these Oura rings to track my heart rate variability over the last few months. And I've noticed when I eat late, my heart rate variability overnight is dramatically different, like a third of what it is when I eat early. I've tried to Google this and find some stuff online. I can't find much about it. But does that surprise you or not?
No, that doesn't surprise me, because we know that heart rate variability and many physiologies are tied to this intricate interaction between different hormones. And eating at late night, of course, trigger different types of hormones from our gut that can interfere with different kind of hormones and brain signals coming from the brain to control heart rate. So what we typically find is when people go through these 12 weeks of self-directed 10 hours time-restricted eating, we see a lot of benefits, but I can highlight maybe say 12 benefits that are really powerful, and we see it very often. It doesn't mean that everybody will see all the benefits, or at least some people will see one or more. So number one is within 2 to 3 weeks, people find that they have reduced acid reflux, heartburn, stomach problems.
This is from doing the time-restricted eating?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is very interesting because almost 1 in 3 adults in the US and also in the UK and Western worlds, they experience acid reflux at least once a week. So by reducing this, we also reduce their dependence on acid reflux medications, which now we know that they have very bad adverse impact in long term. So number two, people improve their sleep. And this was really surprising to us, because why eating for 10 hours will improve your sleep? And then now we are understanding why, because when you don't have food in your gut, your core body temperature cools down much better. And our core body temperature has to cool down for us to go to sleep. So we get into deeper sleep. It's not that we may extend our sleep, we may sleep more, but whatever time we are in bed, we sleep much better. So number two, better sleep. And number three is the gut repair and reduced leaky gut. So there is now this new idea that a lot of us might have leaky gut, stuff may be leaking out of our gut, and this undigested food materials or maybe some bacteria can get into our blood and cause inflammation. And what we find, both in animal studies and also in humans, signs that the gut is not leaky and there is reduced leakiness, so inflammation goes down. So, and I explain it much more in the book. The number 4 is less joint pain. And this is something that we find many people say, particularly people who are above 45 or 50, we all have a little bit of joint pain, little stiffness, and that comes from systemic inflammation. So when our systemic inflammation goes down, then there is less joint pain. And then when there is less joint pain, people are more likely to walk little bit more, take the stairs instead of elevator, and all these good things happen.
Wow. I mean, that's 5, amazing, isn't it? About the gut itself. Just so many people, myself included, have unexplained problems with the gut that it's just so hard to work out what's going on.
Yeah. So that's why this was so powerful. And initially, we didn't realize this only after we went to humans, because animals are not telling us whether they are having heartburn or acid reflux. Only humans will tell us. So that was really exciting. And also, there are many participants who tell us, well, they could not take the stairs, and now they can take the stairs, and they're so happy about it.
Yeah.
And then number 5, and this is the most important thing that we find, that is better blood sugar control. Nearly now 1 in 4 in the US and maybe 1 in 4 or 5 in the UK and Western worlds have what we call pre-diabetes, which is first stage into diabetes. And just by eating within 10 hours for 10 weeks or 12 weeks, we find people can reverse their pre-diabetes, completely reverse their pre-diabetes. It's not that in every case it happens, but in most cases it does happen. I think this is where combining a little bit healthy eating with time-restricted eating will help majority of people with pre-diabetes to reverse that. And pre-diabetes is a big deal because those who have pre-diabetes, within 5 to 10 years, they will get diabetes. And then it's all downhill from there. So very excited about this. Then number 6 is better heart health. And this is where your question came in. And what we find, people who eat, say, between 8 to 10 hours, we see a significant reduction in their arrhythmia. So as we get older, our heart once in a while doesn't beat rhythmically, and there's a little bit of arrhythmia. And those who are on the who run or bike, once in a while they feel that. So that goes down. And blood pressure also drops by 5 to 10 millimeter. It's modest, but still it's significant for those who are trying to drop 10 millimeter mercury of their blood pressure. Then number 7, we're just halfway, better microbiome. What we find is when our gut goes through fasting and eating phase, then we create different environment for different types of bugs. So we have a rich variety of bugs in our gut. And the consensus out there is the more diverse is your microbiome, the healthier it is.
Yes.
So we see that. The number 8 is improved mitochondria. Almost every cell in our body, has mitochondria. They're the energy house. And surprisingly, our mitochondria also need some downtime every day to repair, divide, and go through what we call mitophagy to get rid of the damaged mitochondria. So since mitochondria are the energy house, every time we eat, those are the ones who have to process the food. And when we don't eat for, say, 12 to 14 hours, then they get enough time for the repair process. So we have healthy mitochondria throughout the body, in our liver, in our muscle, everywhere. Then number 9, what we find is improved muscle mass. Many people think that if you don't eat for 12 to 14 hours, you lose your muscle. And in fact, what happens is when you don't eat for 12 to 14 hours, your muscle repairs itself much better. Damaged muscle proteins are broken down, they are sent to liver, and then they are excreted out from our kidney, and then new muscle proteins are made, so your muscle becomes much better. In fact, in animals, we see there is a slight increase in muscle mass, and in humans, we haven't seen any decrease in muscle mass. Depending on their diet, some people gain some muscle mass. The number 10 is reduced risk for brain diseases. As people are sleeping better, and if they go outside for 30 minutes of bright light is the best antidepressant, and it's free. The only thing you have to do is just step out of the house, and even under canopy, even if it's a cloudy day, just staying outside, taking a brisk walk for 15 to 30 minutes is enough to get that antidepressant.
Even if it's a grey winter's London day.
Yes, even in London. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I was in London. It was typical London day, cloudy, and I recorded there was 7,000 lux of light outside. So,
you measured it, did you?
Yeah, I measured it. Everywhere I go, I actually measure light. So I have a map of all the airports, everywhere I go, all the hotels I
Oh, wow.
stay.
And what do you think of what do you think of the infrared lights? Do they have the same effect if you're sitting in front of one of these infrared lights?
Not really, because the light sensor that senses blue light, that's the most important one to increase alertness in our brain, and that's less sensitive to infrared light.
Okay.
Um, and then there are also other reasons why the brain diseases reduce. So just like our body has better time to repair and rejuvenate, our brain cells also have better time to repair and rejuvenate because of sleep and also fasting. One thing that happens is after 12 to 14 hours of fast, your body naturally produces small amount of ketone bodies that are very good for brain. So we think that that's also improving brain health. The number 11 is less infectious disease. This happens because our skin and our gut lining repairs much better at night when we are sleeping and when we don't have food in our system. And if we have a better barrier function, then disease-causing bugs don't enter our body. Second is our immune system is not getting exhausted fighting food particles from leaky gut or systemic inflammation. So the immune system is much stronger to fight any bug that gets into the system. So that's why we also see reduced infectious disease. And then finally, number 12, you may not see it within 12 weeks, but it's a long-term consequence, that is reduced risk for cancer. Since there is less inflammation, less damage to the cells, and there is more time to repair DNA, all of these three work together to reduce risk for cancer. In fact, we see this in long-term studies. For example, my colleagues from University of California, San Diego, have studied thousands of women who have gone through breast cancer, or they have looked at their records over a long period of time, and they find that women who eat for 11 hours or less, so that means they eat for 11 hours, fast for 13 hours or more, they have less risk for breast cancer in long run. And second, those who actually already have breast cancer, if they're fasting for 13 hours or more, then they have much better prognosis and less relapse. So that's why we're very excited that doing these simple tricks and adopting some discipline, time discipline to your life can have such a huge, huge long-term impact.
I have some specific questions for you based on that, which I've been storing up for you. Coffee. Where does black coffee come into it? Do you approve of somebody? Obviously, we're not talking about a Starbucks Trappuccino with like 4 shots of syrup in it, but a black coffee outside the feeding window, which I always think makes you sound a little bit like you're an animal in a zoo. But
yes.
but a black coffee, is that okay?
Well, it depends on the time and context. So, for example, there are a lot of people who wake up very early and then they're driving to work. And they're sleep deprived, they're sleepy. So it's better to be caffeinated than to drive sleep deprived, because that's a public health problem.
Yes.
And if you do that, then black coffee is perfectly fine. What I say is, if your eating window starts at 9 a.m., then a little bit of black coffee before that is okay. This is one area where it's entirely my guess, because there is no way in my lifetime I foresee myself doing a controlled study in mice. We cannot force them black coffee.
Why not? Do mice not like coffee?
Well, there will be a lot more complications. Suppose say after coffee they become hyperactive, then there is the confound of more activity. Then what I say is, since coffee takes 6 to 8 hours to break down to half its intake, so that means if you drink 1 cup of coffee at noon, you still have half a cup of coffee in your system at 6 or 7 in the evening, and then quarter cup of coffee even at midnight. So that means one should avoid coffee maybe after lunch or after lunchtime. So that will help to promote better sleep at night.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But you're still kind of saying it's better to wait until the window opens before having the black coffee?
Yeah, because we don't know the impact of coffee on many different hormones and different systems. So that's why I stay away. Another thing is coffee is not a standardized drink. So, for example, I can have Starbucks black coffee is very dilute, whereas if you have black coffee in Turkey, it's five times more concentrated.
Yes.
So essentially, you are talking about, say, 50 milligram of caffeine versus even 500 milligram or 300 milligram of caffeine. So just use your common sense. If coffee is the last thing that keeps you happy in this world, then why to not have it?
Yes, it is. What about supplements then? Because, I'm interested to know, I spoke to Dr. Dale Bredesen, who wrote The End of Alzheimer's, and I was quite surprised when I asked him about supplements, because and we were talking about intermittent fasting, which I know is slightly different from the way you describe time-restricted eating. But he said he didn't think that supplements would have much impact on that outside the kind of the window. But it struck me that anything you swallow, your body's going to process in some ways as food.
Yeah, but it's a small amount, because most of the supplements you are eating is less than a gram, and unless it's a gummy bear supplement where you are chewing 5 gummy bears, one for calcium, one for then it's a different story. But unless it's a gummy bear or supplements that are into your smoothie, then it's fine to have supplements.
Okay, so if you were to say, let's say the window ends at 6, and then you take a magnesium supplement before bed or something like that, that would be okay, and it wouldn't.
That is fine.
Okay. Oh, that's good.
Even for melatonin, for example, a lot of people take melatonin. And my only advice is, well, don't take melatonin right after you eat, because melatonin puts your pancreas to sleep. So maybe give yourself 1 to 2 hours after your last meal to take melatonin. And that's a clear example where you should not actually take the sleep supplement right after your meal or even before your meal. You have to wait. Yeah. So it will all depend on supplements and medication. And that is another fascinating, exciting area of circadian biology. And that is, almost every medication that we take has a peak time when it is most effective. And if it is taken outside that window, then it may not give you the benefit, or sometimes it can also have very severe adverse side effect. So that's a new area called chronomedicine. How to time our medicine optimally. One simple example is medications for arthritis. Although the arthritis pain is more severe in the morning, taking the pain medication at night actually helps you much better in reducing morning pain. And even there are now slow release formulation that you take at bedtime, and then the effect kicks in the middle of your sleep. So conversely, there are also new data showing that if you take a vaccination in the morning, it's much better than in the evening, etc. So depending on the medication, depending on therapy, even for heart surgery, for total body irradiation, for cancer, all of these seem to have an optimal time.
Right, and do you think that's the same with not just medication but food as well? Because I've, for instance, noticed that, I think a diet relatively high in saturated fat suits me quite well. But I feel like when I have a lot of saturated fat in the evening, that doesn't suit me quite as well as during the day. Or am I just overthinking it?
No, I mean, almost everything every process in our body has a circadian rhythm. So, for example, for saturated fat or fat in general, those have to be digested and absorbed by our bile acids and enzyme and a hormone called cholecystokinin, CCK. And both of these seem to have a circadian rhythm. So by the end of the day, we have already exhausted a lot of our bile acids during the day to absorb some little bit of fat here and there, because our stomach or our intestine may not be very precise in calculating how much fat you ate in your breakfast or lunch. So it tunes down some bile acids or cholecystokinin for nighttime. it might have already secreted most of it during daytime. So that's why for some people, it becomes a little difficult to digest that extra fat for dinner. And conversely, same thing like, for example, for sugar, we know that our insulin production is much better in the first half of the day. So having that sugary treat, whether it's donut in the US, is okay in the morning, but not so okay in the afternoon because our body cannot process that well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's so interesting. And then obviously, when you're talking about the circadian code and circadian rhythms, we're also looking at sleep as well. How important do you think it is to have a very dark room to block out kind of blue light and bright light, or maybe in my case, living in central London, the street light at night?
Yeah, so that's a very important issue because we have so much light pollution and so much lights coming from our electronic devices that they disrupt our sleep. And in fact, our lab, among 3 other labs, we discovered that blue light receptor, melanopsin, and we have been figuring out how it affects our sleep. And this is very important to have some blackout curtain, or at least one. Everyone should purchase a comfortable eye mask, sleeping mask they can use once in a while. And that's extremely important. So the bottom line is this, Tony. Over the last 110 years, starting from, say, 1910 onwards, we have doubled human longevity. We have gone from living only 40 to 45 years in Western worlds, now living up to 90 years is not uncommon. And we did this with one simple driving principle, and that was the infectious disease, how to prevent infectious disease, how to fight it. Those things were driving it. So in that way, we have saved a lot of lives. You and I included. We must have taken antibiotics at least once or more in our lifetime. So that means we already have one or more lives, as in Mario games.
Yeah.
But what we haven't figured out is how to double our healthy lifespan. Because if you go around and interview any 45-year-old in London or San Francisco or New York, you will find that 3 out of 4 have some chronic disease. So now we need another theory or another driving principle that will help us to extend healthy lifespan. And this is where I strongly believe that the circadian code or circadian theory of health comes in. Because if you look around, most of our disease chronic diseases go back to the simple idea that we are living in a desynchronized and random society. And the best way to optimize our health is to keep appointment with our circadian rhythm. Very simple idea. Just think about anything that we do throughout our day, whether it's my appointment with you or your appointment with another business client, or even your appointment with your spouse to come to dinner. Everything that we do is based on time. And if we mess up with that appointment, then there is only negative consequence. There is nothing positive about it. Showing up late at work, showing up late into the class, everywhere, showing up late in doctor's office. But the thing is, we also have an inbuilt appointment system for our body, and that's the circadian code. A body we need to go to sleep at a certain time and stay in bed for 8 hours. We have to go outside, get 30 minutes minimum, 30 minutes of daylight. And we have to take maybe 5,000 or 10,000 steps in a day. And we have to eat within 10 hours, a maximum of 12 hours. And those are our appointments with our circadian code. And if we miss those appointments, then essentially we are collecting negative points. And that accumulate and push us towards chronic disease. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So that's why I strongly believe that just keeping track of your body's circadian code will help you reap the benefit of the wisdom of our body to prevent, delay, or even reverse this disease. And we can easily add at least 10 years to our healthy lifespan.
That's fantastic. And I'm really, as I talk to you, I'm thinking I'm going to be stricter on bedtime. Definitely stricter. Just the same time every night. Although with my job, sometimes, it's hard. Sometimes if I'm working until midnight, I don't get back until 1 a.m, it's going to be 2 hours later than normal. So then, unfortunately, I just have to suck it up, I guess. But
well, at least you can stick with the food timing, because
yes, that's true.
10 hours.
Yeah. And actually, the other thing that frustrates me, and I've done a bit of research on this, and maybe it's just me, but when you get up to pee in the middle of the night, it's very annoying because you've got to wake up. And I've tried to Google online how to stop peeing in the middle of the night, but I can't find any information on it. Have you got any suggestions on that? Because that would be the one thing that would probably improve my sleep more than anything, if I could go through without going to the loo in the middle of the night.
Well, the thing is, if you drink your water, lots of water, like say 1 or 2 hours before going to bed, and then before going to bed, just try to pee. Even if you're not feeling, there'll be something that will come out.
Yeah.
And then that will help you to go through the entire night without waking up to pee. This is something that I have done, and then I live in California where it's very dry. My problem is I have to wake up to drink water because it's so
perfect.
dry. So then I have a humidifier in my room so that I don't have to wake up in the middle of the night to drink water.
Yeah.
But I understand. So hydration is so important for our body, whether it's excess or whether it's some deficiency that can wake us up in the middle of our sleep.
And briefly, you mentioned melatonin a little bit earlier on. Yeah. Is that something that you're comfortable with people taking?
Well, melatonin is a natural hormone, and it rises at nighttime. In the US, at least, it's not regulated, so that means it doesn't have too much adverse side effect. Having said that, one has to be very careful in taking melatonin because it's not a drug that can be prescribed at say 3 milligram for everybody. We have very different sensitivity to melatonin. That's one thing. So people should start trying say at 1 milligram, and people should start trying this only when they're not traveling, because when you're traveling, you don't want to try a new drug. And then try to go to 2 or 3 milligram or 5 milligrams, and then see what is your sweet spot. I have seen a lot of people, they complain of terrible nightmare when they take a high dose of melatonin. So one should figure out.
Yeah.
And then second is one has to be careful when they're taking. So as I said, don't take melatonin right after your dinner. Wait at least an hour or two before taking melatonin.
Yeah. Okay, that's definitely good advice. And personally, I've found a tiny amount, about the 10th of the recommended dose, absolutely knocks me out. So so I definitely hear what you're saying about different people having different tolerances.
Yeah.
So what is one book, Satchin, that you would recommend? Something I ask everyone on Zestology. What would you recommend to people for a good book to read? And it can be anything you like.
Well, there's one book that really influenced me a lot, and it's a Pulitzer Prize-winning book called Time, Love, and Memory. This is by Jonathan Weiner, published a long time ago, almost 18 years ago. And this book is really interesting in the sense he goes back and forth between scientists working to figure out how the circadian clock works or how memory works in tiny fruit flies. And it gives a very nice perspective for every general audience to get an insight into how science really works. Means it takes, if you think about this field of circadian rhythm, almost 47 years ago, the first discovery was made. And from there, we have come all the way. And it's not easy. So this book gives you all the human aspect of doing research and how slowly things build up.
That sounds
so this
excellent.
was very influential.
Yeah. And then what would be your one recommendation to everyone listening for more energy, vitality, and motivation?
Yeah, I think everybody should listen to the circadian code and optimize your circadian rhythm. Because when it comes to energy, vitality, and motivation, one thing is our brain has to function much better. And one way we can boost brain function is by having a strong circadian rhythm. We are even finding that time-restricted eating can boost brain function in a way that we can reduce the symptoms of Huntington disease, Alzheimer's disease, and we can increase activity and alertness in people. So truly, this is the circadian cord holds the fountain of youth.
Yeah,
you can say. Yeah.
It's been so good to talk to you, Satchin. I am genuinely going to make quite a few alterations based on what you've said over the last half hour or so. So thank you. And where can people find out more about you and, of course, your book, The Circadian Code?
Yeah, so thank you, Tony. People can always find more about the book on the website, and also we have a website, mycircadianclock.org, which is a scientific study. There are a lot of blog posts. All of these are based on science.
Okay, Satchin, thank you for all your work, and I will not be having coffee until the window opens.
Thank you, Tony. It was such a pleasure to be on your show.
That is pretty much it. Thank you to Dr. Satchin Panda. Thank you to you for listening to Zestology. Let me know how you get on with your feeding window, and maybe you'll be cutting saturated fat a little bit in the evening. It's just easier said than done. You know, I recorded this podcast earlier on today, and since then I've been considering how I can do this. I had an early dinner. It's now about 7:30, 7:45. I'm heading round to a mate. I know he's going to want to give me something, a decaf bulletproof coffee or a pudding of some sort, and you know, it's just hard to kind of turn it down, really, isn't it? But small steps, and let's see how it goes. Look, as always, thank you for listening to Zestology. Remember, the Zestology Book Club is on Facebook, and my 3 Zesty Things email goes out every week, and you can sign up to that at tonywrighton.com. As always, I'll be back next week with another podcast. Until then, see you later, and have a good zesty week.